Parrish, welcome back to the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball Podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, and leaky black. Matt Norlander is here with me. If you're watching us on YouTube, please smash the like button like you're Brandon Davies. You have consent. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the YouTube channel, please go ahead and knock that out while you're here. Let's get into it. Arizona's IARP case has finally been resolved. Quick refresher, the Arizona men's basketball program was facing 5 level 1 violations for allegedly breaking a lot of the rules you're not supposed to break back when there were rules in college athletics. Arizona's punishment for past transgressions is basically nothing significant for Arizona, nothing significant for Sean Miller. Now, in fairness, Arizona had already served a 1-year self-imposed postseason ban. Sean Miller, lost his job. So there have been punishments connected to this. But today's additional punishment is basically just some scholarship reductions and a $5,000 fine. Deadleg, first question. How hilarious would it be if Christian Dawkins paid Arizona's fine in cash? Because that seems like the perfect way to bring this story to a close.
No. Where is Larnell right now? What is our guy doing? Where is he? What's he doing?
I don't know.
Where's Larnell?
He hasn't reached out lately. I lost track. Through life, sometimes you lose track of people. You see somebody's name pops up and you go, man, I wonder whatever happened to them. And that's where I'm at with Larnell right now. I don't know. I hope he's, I hope he still maintains a relationship with DeAndre Ayton. Otherwise, those were some wasted years for Larnell.
Yeah. Shouts to Larnell. Vacated victory is still a thing. So Miller is going to lose. I did them. So Raleigh Alkins is one of the players involved in some of this stuff with bribe money, et cetera. So he has been deemed retroactively ineligible. That comes with all his college stats are going to be off the book now. And I have that as 50 wins coming off of Arizona's total as an institution, and then 50 wins in official capacity coming off of Miller's overall record, which means I did not bring this up before. So they have 3 weeks to get this done or I don't know what happens, but going into the morning, Sean Miller had won. Oh, okay. So he had won 430 games. He's going to be a 2-time 400 winning coach then.
I love it when that happens. I love it when people get to reach milestones twice.
Yeah, it's just like that. It's done. How about this though? Yeah, you're right though. I did want to emphasize that. The punishments today, Miller doesn't get a suspension. I want to get to that in just a second. And Arizona's got customary, whatever. The punishments are very minor, and they're not going to prevent Tommy Lloyd in Arizona from being a top 10 program if he's the guy and they got the dudes. That's just not going to, it's not the best. You don't want to have a scholarship taken here and lose these recruiting days. You'd rather not have that. It's not nothing, but it's not major. So, but
most coaches these days don't even want to use 13 scholarships. So scholarship reductions, I'm not saying it's nothing, but it's not. You're right. If Tommy Lloyd can build a championship team at Arizona, this is not the type of thing that's going to mess that up in any way whatsoever.
It's not. And we'll get to Miller not getting anything in just a minute here. But yes, he did lose his job. As an effect, there are no violins here. As an effect of what all happened here, and eventually, him not being able to stem that tide, Arizona had to get rid of Sean Miller, and Sean Miller was fired. So that was a byproduct of this. And the school did self-impose a postseason ban, which actually, if it didn't, I think it would have had a postseason ban today, because according to the release, it said the panel also applied significant weight to Arizona's self-imposed penalties, especially the 2021 postseason competition ban for its men's basketball program. So I don't want to ignore the fact that Arizona doing that, which when it did it, it was very noisy, somewhat controversial, obviously, but it prevented in 22-23 a talented Arizona team from being taken off the board to play in the 23 NCAA tournament. So, the scales are balancing there. If they had not done that, based on what I'm reading here, it's certainly conceivable that would have been the case, but by being proactive, they've avoided it. And we'll kind of continue the thread from the last time we talked about all this with Louisville. Yes, with the IARP process and the independent resolution panel, the IRP, which is the actual group of lawyers and et cetera that rule on this. The theme that has emerged unquestionably is that schools that have been involved with the IARP and gone through this process, they are getting off lightly, but they have also done some self-imposing. Again, they have done some stuff to try and mitigate that. And they're saying we're not going to punish the current players. If only Oklahoma State had done the same thing, because at the end of we still got to get to Kansas and LSU, and that'll happen next year, February, March, April, whatever. But Oklahoma State decided not to go the IRP route, went the NCAA route, and to this point, it's still been the only school in this whole thing that's been punished with the postseason ban that was not self-imposed. I agree with the tactic here. This is a 5-year-old case, and I don't want to totally replay the Hitch GP, but it's a 5-year-old case, and nobody there now, almost nobody there now, was really involved in all this stuff. Initially broke. So what are we doing? Book Richardson does get a 10-year show cause, which is notable. He also got it. Read this real quick, GP. The reason why Book got a 10-year show cause and former assistant Mark Phelps got 2 years for basically trying to cover up during the investigation. Richardson got it not because he accepted $60,000 in bribes. I mean, that wasn't good, and he'd be getting a show cause if that had actually happened. But the IARP or the IRP basically said it's because he didn't cooperate. He didn't cooperate. He didn't help us, and we're going to throw the book at him. Pun honestly not intended there. Here's the direct quote from the statement earlier on Wednesday. After his employment was terminated in Arizona, former assistant men's basketball coach number 1 failed to cooperate with the NCAA enforcement staff throughout the infractions case investigation by knowingly providing false information and refusing to disclose information relevant to an investigation of possible violations, undermining and threatening the integrity of the according to the infractions case decision. Looks like they got a typo in that statement there, but that is what exacerbated his penalties. Obviously, we'll also note that Miller maintained his innocence and that he didn't know the whole time. That's what's been ruled on here, but nonetheless, 2 former assistants have show causes. Richardson gets 10 years. Miller gets no games.
All of this stuff was so long ago. Everybody's moved on, so I don't really care. But I would ask the question, like, what is the point of going through all this stuff if when it's over, the judge and jury, the IRP, just basically says, you know what, let's move on, everything's cool. Again, I don't really care, but it all seems undeniably silly and like a huge waste of time, money, everything. As for Sean Miller, he, like I said, he's already paid a big price. Reputation damaged, lost the Arizona job. He's paid a price. So don't let anybody tell you Sean Miller got off scot-free, because that's simply untrue. But what is true is that he was not punished by the IRP on Wednesday. And the explanation for that, the hearing panel said, is because they determined that they found no violation for Sean Miller because he, quote, demonstrated that he promoted an atmosphere of compliance and monitored 2 of his assistant coaches. Now, with all due respect, that's outrageous. Like, when your assistant coaches are breaking recruiting rules and academic rules and lots of rules, while you're developing a relationship with Christian Dawkins, you're quite clearly not promoting an atmosphere of compliance. Like, what you're promoting is an atmosphere of, let's do whatever we need to do, whatever we got to do to get the job done. And I don't say that to be mean. I just say it because it's true. We don't have to play stupid here. So I have no idea how the IRP could sensibly reach the conclusion that Sean Miller promoted an atmosphere of compliance. Like, that's laughable. But congrats to Sean Miller and every other coach dealing with IARP cases, because the truth is, you might be right that if not for the self-imposed postseason ban, Arizona would have been hit with a postseason ban today. You might be right, but I'm not sure of that. And the reason I'm not sure of that is because the IRP has shown no interest whatsoever in punishing anybody. That's the real lesson here. So good for Sean Miller. And if you're Bill Self, you got to be encouraged by what you keep watching with all of these IARP cases.
Oh, that's really the big question that lingers from this, is the fact that Miller's no longer at Arizona. They self-imposed. Kansas is never self-imposed. Curtis Townsend and Bill Self are still there. I'm not. When it comes to Kansas, Miller had one level 1 at his feet. Self and that program have 5, and a lot of the violations here in the Arizona stuff were exacerbated by former assistants refusing to cooperate or misleading investigators in the case. Those guys did get hit there, so we'll see. I don't think it's still totally apples to apples, but I think it is fair, if you are a fan of Kansas, and sure toss in LSU as well, I guess, in this, to have more optimism as more of these cases roll in. That's a fair takeaway. I'm not going to sit here and declare that when the Kansas stuff comes out, whenever that is, that Bill Self is going to dodge any kind of suspension and Kansas is going to dodge any kind of significant punishment. I will not sit here and predict that to be the case, but if you want to think like, man, it's certainly seeming like it's more likely, I do think that's fair. I also, on the note that you just mentioned there, I couldn't help but notice the fact that when the notice of allegations came out, and you're right, it's been a long time. If we had been able to, and I don't want to flashback, trust me, but if you go back to September 17, when all this comes out, and then you go back to, man, was it that Thursday? It was a Thursday, I think, or Thursday or a Friday, when the ESPN report came out claiming, the DeAndre Payton, which, by the way, I'll never say with 100% certainty it didn't happen. There's been no evidence to that ever. And that is something that Miller publicly and privately has just slammed the table on continuously and quite clearly, with no evidence, no reference to that in the case here. That looks to be an erroneous report. But when that came out, if I had told you, GP, if we had done that podcast, and then a genie appeared before me and said, hey, just so you know, it's going to be a long time before this thing is done. But Sean Miller, he's not going to have any punishment from this. Now, he technically did get fired, so he did face some retribution. It's just wild to think back on the temperature and the tone of the Arizona stuff in particular, and where we are now. And with that as backdrop, with the NCAA in 2020 in its notice of allegations, again, placing a significant charge at Miller's feet with all of this, saying that you're getting a level 1 coach control charge because it falls on you, right? The exact wording was, the ultimate responsibility for the integrity of the men's basketball program rested with Miller and his staff's actions, and reflect on Miller as the head coach. That is the NCAA's notice of allegations when it leveled the level 1 charge against him. But in the IRP's decision, no, absolutely not. It said he cooperated, and the group determined that he was not going to be punished because the IRP looked at everything here and said, we don't think that Sean Miller failed to promote an atmosphere of compliance. We don't think that's the case. We disagree. Let
me stop you there. As somebody who knows this sport much better than the people on this hearing panel understand the sport, can you, with a straight face, let me make sure I'm distinguishing between two things. Okay. You want to say we can't prove Sean Miller did anything with any of these recruits, players, academic stuff, nothing. We don't have anything on Sean Miller. That's one thing. I'll accept that. Sean Miller promoted an atmosphere of compliance. Can you say that with a straight face?
I am telling you what the IRP said here in this report.
I know what they said. I already mentioned what they said. I'm asking you, can you say with a straight face, Sean Miller promoted an atmosphere of compliance?
I mean, I can't accuse him of not doing it because I wasn't in that athletic department of those offices. I don't know.
Let me tell you what every coach in America will tell you. That if you truly promote an atmosphere of compliance, your assistants aren't going to be doing the things that Sean Miller's assistants are doing. Your assistants are only going to do those things if they feel like on some level they are under pressure to get the job done no matter what. That's what coaches will tell you.
Yeah, that's fine. And sometimes that's absolutely right. Coaches also absolutely love to gossip about stuff they might not know anything about. So I'm not going to just take coaches' words over something when they might not know entirely. They could be right about this, but I'm not going to take it as gospel. I was surprised. I bring this up because I was surprised the IRP actually did this and turned around and said, actually, after going through all this stuff, we disagree with the NCAA's assertion. We actually do think that Sean Miller promoted an atmosphere of compliance and didn't let his 2 assistant coaches knowingly go rogue at his discretion. So I'm more inclined to side on your side of this, GP, but I didn't think I'd see that in this report today. That was actually the most surprising thing that came about it with me. And that is why Miller is not sitting any games. I did think he was going to get suspended. I thought it would be 3 to 5 games. I'm not surprised it's nothing, but my expectation when I woke up this morning and learned we'd be getting the verdict on this, I actually thought that he'd be sitting, and it was just a question of would they actually do it effective immediately or start it next season. But it doesn't matter. He's going to coach Xavier this weekend, and he's dodged anything and everything. It is quite the tour of vindication right now for Sean Miller. And I don't know how much he will ultimately talk about this on the record. I'm sure a certain part of him is really eager and anxious and wanting to, but at another point, like, can't actually once and for all, I guess, put it behind him. So I don't know. We'll wait and see. But it is undeniably a major victory for him. And on the same level for Arizona, even though people around Arizona were more expecting along the lines of what they got today.
Keep in mind, this is the same body that concluded that Penny Hardaway gave James Wiseman's family $10,000 because he's a philanthropist, as opposed to because he wanted the #1 ranked high school center in the country on his high school basketball team at East High School. My point is they don't know what they're doing. They don't understand the sport. Like, Penny Hardaway has thrown around money for a million good reasons, throughout his life. So by definition, he is a philanthropist, but that ain't why he gave the money to James Wiseman's family. He gave the money to James Wiseman's family to get him to move to Memphis so James Wiseman could play on his high school basketball team. That wasn't philanthropy. That was buying a high school basketball player. And again, if the hearing panel came out and said, we got nothing on Sean Miller, and his assistant coaches wouldn't cooperate, we wanted to ask them about him, they wouldn't talk to us about, I got you. That's all fine. I'm just saying, we actually believe Sean Miller was promoting an atmosphere of compliance. Seems like come on, man. Like, when you've got assistants running around doing the things they were doing and you're on the phone, on the record with Christian Dawkins, that's not really it's not promoting an atmosphere of compliance. It's just, that's simply not.
Are you ready to hand down how many games for Sean Miller from you right now? How many games?
0. I don't care. I'm just saying the only thing I care about is like stupidity, like people being stupid when it comes to this stuff. Again, you can be happy that Sean is getting to move on with his career, unfazed, and that's fine with me. I'm happy about that. He has paid a price. I don't think you got to make somebody suffer forever. And it ain't like he killed somebody. He was just running a basketball program that was breaking a lot of rules. But to go, yeah, we feel like this guy was promoting compliance at this school when these things were happening. Like, those two sentences can't go together. All these things happened at Arizona's program, but the head coach was promoting an atmosphere of compliance. Like, those two sentences do not go together. That's nonsense.
Yeah. And there are definitely people extremely dug in on both sides of this issue. I'm just, thank God this is done. And I'm happy it's done like now. And then we didn't get this like on December 22nd. So a small dose of credit to the IRP for getting another one out of the way well in advance of Christmas. Although I will say, on a personal note, I was actually planning to maybe get a little, I'm behind on the Christmas shopping, my man. I actually want to get some of that done today. Got both the kiddos at school. This is eating up a large part of my afternoon. That's a me problem. I'll move on. But yeah, so it's done. I got nothing else on this. So it's all you. There's some, I've seen some of this today. You go back and look at some of the initial reactions to what you were talking about, because I do think that story broke on a Friday night. That's what it feels like to me. When Mark Schlabach, like, let's put a name on it. Mark Schlabach at ESPN reported that that Sean Miller had more or less bought DeAndre Ayton. And that it was caught on a wiretap. That's the important detail.
Right.
And that him talking about that was caught on a wiretap. That was never proven to be the case, and that never came up in court documents or in the NCAA stuff. So that initial report that stated that was never proven to be materially true.
That is absolutely true where we are right now. And So you're going to have a lot of people digging up old things that somebody tweeted or we wrote or said. But like, you got to remember in that moment, like, this is a reputable reporter at a reputable media company reporting that Sean Miller has bought DeAndre Ayton and it's on a wiretap. So you react to that in the way you react to that, right? And if it turns out to be an erroneous report, and that's certainly what appears to be the case, then you react differently. And Schlabach's reputation has been damaged by that. He can, I haven't looked at his Twitter mentions today, but I bet if you did, they'd be filled up with Arizona fans. So like, I don't say this because I like Mark. He and I sort of came up together in this profession. I consider him a friend, but it appears that he messed that up, and him messing that up, it didn't set in motion all of the things that got Sean Miller ultimately removed as Arizona's coach. Because take the DeAndre Ayton stuff, set it aside. Quite clearly, there was still some stuff happening in that program that would get most coaches fired. But that story did set in motion a series of reactions that undeniably damaged Sean's reputation. And that's another price that he paid. And that's one that, frankly, at this moment seems unfair.
I would agree with that. I remember many, many people calling for Sean Miller, including some on television that Saturday,
Sure.
To be fired. And I remember saying on this podcast, because I believe it was single sourced, I remember saying, unless I have literally heard the transcript or I have obtained a copy of the transcript with official markings on it, I would be unwilling to go with that. But nonetheless, here we are. And finally, this portion of that story is over. But the FBI adjacent stuff still will not be resolved until 2023 with Kansas and LSU.
Can't wait for those. Let's move on to basketball stuff. Alabama beat Memphis late Tuesday to improve to 9-1. Brandon Miller is awesome again. We'll talk about the Crimson Tide next. But first, a word from our partners.
Don't stop watching Leo Messi, the man, the myth, the legend, the GOAT. Utterly explosive. The UEFA Champions League. Stream PSG matches live February on Paramount+.
So Alabama beat Memphis late Tuesday to improve to 9-1. Final score was 91-88 Crimson Tide. There's no letdown for Nate Oates' program after a weekend win at Houston. I know he, as most coaches would be, were a little concerned about that. We just picked up this massive win, and now we're coming back home and playing a brand in Memphis, and a quality team in Memphis, but they don't have a number beside their name. Are we sure we're going to be ready for this? And though the game got closer late, I think, than Alabama wanted it to be, they still win the game, improved to 9-1, with the lone loss coming to a UConn team that is smashing everybody. I've got Alabama fourth in my top 25 and one spot behind that UConn undefeated team. And that makes Alabama my highest ranked SEC team at this moment. Are you ready to go? Alabama Crimson Tide, SEC favorite, dead leg.
No,
you're not there yet.
But I did say, I did write that, it's an elite team deserving of top 5 status. Tide will be in the top 5 of my power rankings when they go up on Thursday. Where do you have the Tide in yours right now?
Fourth. It goes number 1 Purdue, number 2 Virginia, number 3 UConn, and I'm only. It's funny. No matter how many times you say it or how many times you write it, every day somebody still asks. So what's your explanation for UConn being behind Purdue and Virginia, dude? I've explained it 50 times. There's 3 teams that stand out above everybody else right now after Houston took its first loss. And those 3 teams are UConn, Purdue, and Virginia. They're all undefeated with super strong computer numbers. I've had them in the Purdue, Virginia, UConn order, and I've just decided I'm not going to flip-flop that order based on the results of this game or that game. Until somebody loses out of that group of teams, I will have it 1, 2, 3, Purdue, Virginia, UConn. But like I've said a billion times, if you want to argue UConn's been the most impressive team so far this season, there's a lot of data to support that. So I've got it 1, 2, 3, Purdue, Virginia, UConn, Alabama 4, Houston 5.
Why the hell? I'll give up the goods. UConn will be number 1 in my power rankings when they go up Thursday because they deserve it from that. But you get a little GP, you get a little Norlander, you get a little of this, a little of that, and variety, spice of life, all that good stuff. As for your Alabama question, Boone and I talked about this on the Sunday night episode, and we were trying to determine how we would order it. Tennessee, Kentucky, Bama, Arkansas being that group. Arkansas, no Brazil, obviously for the rest of the season. Him being out might knock them down slightly a peg, but we'll see how they respond. I still got plenty of guys on that roster, but as KB and I talked about, there's just no one that's on that roster that was doing the stuff that Trevon Brazil was doing. With that in mind, Tennessee at 9-1, yeah, one ugly Sunday over Maryland, but it is 9-1. Coincidentally enough, at Arizona on Saturday. That's a big one. We'll preview on the Friday episode there. Bama at this point, quite clearly, deserves to be in that group. A favorite, I don't know. Its only loss to, yes, UConn, 15 points. I was there, saw it in person in Portland, and frankly, UConn ran them off the floor. It didn't even feel like a 15-point outcome by the time that game had finished there. The wins over Michigan State, North Carolina, and that 4-0 game, and then at Houston over the weekend, which was awesome, and then against Memphis there. So they've been terrific, and 2 quickies from me. One on Memphis, then one on Bama, and I'll hit it right back over the net to you, GP. If you're a Memphis fan, you're definitely inspired with the or was regarded, top 10, top 15 in the country. I just feel like if you're listening to the podcast, you maybe know about him. If you're a diehard Memphis fan, you know about him. But I feel like he's still, he's doing even a bit more amount of love here and moving forward. Hopefully he gets that, because you can make an argument he's been an All-American level player kind of this season. And with Bama, I'm just impressed that they do it with the amount of youth they have. Brandon Miller was great again, and they've been able to get those young guys to step in and play big. Now, they don't have Nimari Burnett for the foreseeable future because of his injury. Maybe that winds up being an impact overall. But yeah, good group. And Alabama is not the team it was a season ago. Remember last season, could beat anybody, could lose to anybody. One of the most polarizing resumes in the country. And because of that, wound up winning 19 games and then was a one and done, getting toppled by Notre Dame. This group, a lot more composure. Very impressive what Nados has done so far this season, and they will be a factor throughout. Can't wait for that Gonzaga game this Saturday. That'll be yet another one we'll preview on the Friday episode.
Okay, I didn't hear a lot of what you said because you froze up.
Yeah, my Wi-Fi dropped out, but I was just cruising through it because I knew it was coming back. So if you're listening to the pod and you missed me in gaps there, apologies. Wi-Fi did drop out, but I came back in and I was doing some filler on Kendrick Davis as I waited until I reconnected.
If it wasn't completely clear to me whether you were frozen or I was just getting a bad connection. So I just sat here and I just sort of swayed the way I normally do and acted like I was listening, but I didn't hear a thing you said. I know you mentioned Kendrick Davis, though. He has been terrific. He's now averaging 19.5 points, 4.9 assists, 4.0 rebounds for the Tigers. He's gone big in back-to-back games. Got 27 in the win over Auburn, 30 against Alabama. And he's obviously the star of what is a quality Memphis team. One of the frustrating things in the frustrating parts for Memphis fans during the Penny Hardaway era has been that you've got all this talent, but they don't seem to play together. They don't seem to like each other. They're not always on the same page. And you got the feeling sometimes, at least when they were going through bad stretches, that the team was not as good as its individual parts suggested it should be. And this team is like completely opposite. There's no lottery pick on the team. There's probably no first round pick on the team. There might not be a second round pick on the team. They've got Kendrick Davis, who is a great college player, but he's not super fast. He's not super athletic. He's very little. I'm not saying he won't play in the NBA. Who knows? But I don't think he's showing up on many mock drafts right now, but he's a great college player. DeAndre Williams, really good college player. And after that, they just got a bunch of role players. But man, if you watch that game on Tuesday night at Alabama, and really basically any game they've played this season, they play hard, they play together. Everybody understands their roles. I think for fans watching a less talented team, what you want ideally is a super talented team that is also awesome and plays hard and together. That's perfect. But short of that, you'd rather have a team that maybe has a lower bar as it pertains to talent, but boy, they play hard and they play together and they look like they're all pulling in the same direction. You'd rather have that than, the early season team Memphis had last year when Penny was trying to force play Imani Bates, even though he wasn't good enough. And it created all sorts of chemistry problems that got worked out to some degree, but you can tell by the amount of transfers Memphis had, even after a successful season, that some of these guys wanted out and some of these guys were frankly just told to leave. But that's a quality basketball team in Memphis. Fran Fraschilla, for whatever it's worth, said that he put Memphis in the same category as Houston and feels like they're going to be don't just hand the AAC title to Houston quite yet. I'm not ready to go there, but I do think this is a legitimate top 35, 40 team in the country and one that is likely to play in the NCAA tournament. As for Alabama, I don't really know if they should be considered the favorite. They are simply, based on resume and other things, the team that is highest ranked in my top 25 and one among SEC schools right now. But I've got 5 SEC schools in my top 15. Number 4, Alabama. Number 7, Arkansas. Number 9, Mississippi State. Number 13, Tennessee. Number 14, Kentucky. And if you're curious, there are 6 SEC schools in the top 25 at KenPom. The 5 I just mentioned, plus Auburn. And the star at Alabama is Brandon Miller. It's somebody we've talked about before, but he was great. After not being great or even good against Houston, he was really great against Memphis. 24 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists. He was 4 of 8 from 3. So now he's a 6'9" freshman, likely one-and-done lottery pick, who's averaging 18.5 points, 8.4 rebounds per game, shooting 43.7% from 3 on 7.1 attempts per game. So he's a high volume, high percentage, 6'9", 3-point shooter. Those guys have typically, or at least often, they have long careers in the NBA. I suspect that he will as well. It's interesting because you start looking at the top of the SEC. Maybe it's Alabama, maybe it's Arkansas, maybe it's somebody else. Like you mentioned, Arkansas has lost Trayvon Brazile, and Alabama has indefinitely lost Nabari Burnett, who just had wrist surgery after suffering a wrist injury. He was the team's 5th leading scorer. He had started the first 9 games of this season. So you might remember him as this like top 35 high school prospect, class of 2020, who went to Texas Tech and was a bit player, like averaged around 5 points, and then transferred to Alabama. He got hurt before he ever played a game in Alabama last season, missed all of last season with a knee injury. Now he's sidelined again with this wrist injury. So it's just a rough stretch of bad luck. But Nate Oates had mentioned yesterday upon announcing this that it's not good. Obviously, you don't want to lose a starter. You don't want to lose anybody, but they're deeper this season than they've been in other seasons and maybe better equipped to endure this. And at least through one night of it, it got close at the end, but I never got the sense Alabama was going to lose that game. And, it was their 9th win in 10 tries this season. So at least so far, so good without Burnett in the starting lineup.
Agreed. Anything else on your mind, buddy? What else you want to get to here?
Hey, we do a dribble handoff every week. I put this in the...
I know. I haven't done it yet, by the way, because of all this Sean Miller stuff. So I
got to get up early and get your work done, Deadleg.
Hit me up. Oh, yeah.
You got to get up early and get you. If they're going to have the shell ready for you when you wake up, you got to get up early and get going. I'm so tired right now because I got up early and got going. So we do a dribble handoff every week at cbssports.com, and that's where a question is presented, and then me, Norlander, David Cobb, Cal Boone answer it. And today the question was, which player has surprised you most this season? I'll tell you who I went with, but you go first. When you get around to do
who you went with, and then I'll pick
when you get around to doing your job, you tell me who you're going to go with. I went with Ricky Council at Arkansas.
Okay. Why?
Here's my explanation. He played 2 seasons at Wichita State. Last season averaged 12 points while shooting 43.7% from the field for a Wichita State team that, went 6-9 in the AAC. So he averaged 12 points, shot 43% from the field for a team that had a losing record in the American Athletic Conference. Those guys don't usually make big statistical jumps when they transfer to better programs, have better teammates, and play in a better league. But here's Ricky Council. He's now averaging 19.2 points, shooting 52.6% from the field for an Arkansas team that's 9-1 and ranked 7th in the top 25 and won. I went and looked. He's not on our top 101 list of college basketball players in the preseason. We had 2 Arkansas players, Nick Smith in the top 15, I believe, and then Anthony Black somewhere in the 40s. We did not have Ricky Council, but right now Ricky Council is Arkansas's leading scorer, and I'll take it a step further. Right now, Ricky Council is leading the SEC in scoring. I don't know if that would make him the favorite to win SEC Player of the Year. It's way early for that. But so far, so good. He has transferred up, as they say, and statistically gotten a lot better, which I might not be a total surprise to the Arkansas staff, because I remember talking to them, let's just say, after Council enrolled, and they thought he was going to be good. So I assumed he'd be good. They thought he would be really good, but lead the SEC in scoring good? I don't know that anybody expected that. That's pretty impressive stuff, while recognizing it's still early. We'll see where it goes.
As much as I'd like to cheat the question and give you Purdue's starting backcourt, Fletcher Lawyer and Braden Smith.
Oh, that's good. That's really good. That's good.
But they're freshmen, so it's like, you know what? Forget it. I'll stick with a freshman anyway. Then my single answer is Donovan Clingan, and because of what I saw at UConn's preseason practice and how much of a factor he is being for a team that had the preseason Player of the Year and was expecting Clingan to be a spots minute getter, a guy to give Sanogo a breather. Instead, he's been a big force, averaging almost 11 points, 7 boards, shooting 75.4% from the field, and playing 16 minutes. I don't have his per 40 numbers in front of me, but I'm sure they're outrageous. So Clingan would be there, and if not him, the Purdue duo. But I want to give you a single guy. Again, another freshman. It's kind of cheating the question, because it's almost like which guy who's been around is doing a bit more than you might have anticipated. But those are the guys that, near the top of the polls, successful teams, big time factors. Those are the guys that stick out to me.
There was another one that I considered going with. And by the way, the Purdue backcourt is maybe the most accurate answer.
Yeah.
2 sub-90 freshmen starting and flourishing for a team that is, I guess, ranked number 1 in the country right now on the AP poll, right? That's a great answer. But Clingan's great as well. Another one that sort of popped up, Keontae Johnson, Kansas State.
Great one.
Now this was a preseason SEC Player of the Year once upon a time, but once again, he hasn't played in a while. We didn't know what to expect, and he was not on our list of top 101 college basketball players coming into this season. And right now he's averaging 17.3 points for a Kansas State team that's only lost once. That's 3rd in the Big 12 Conference in scoring points per game.
That's a good one there, man. Hey, we got a nice one tonight. 9:00 tip. UCLA at Maryland. It's a somewhat sleepy week because a lot of schools are in finals, so you don't have as high a game inventory. And again, our Friday episode, we got a busy pod week for you here. We got this one, Jay Wright special coming on Thursday. That'll be ready for you in your feed when you wake up. Previewing the CBS Sports Classic, talking a variety of things with
when I wake up or when you wake up, because we apparently wake up. We apparently wake up at different times.
Both. Everyone. When you wake
up. And by
the
way, I should say, I'm just goofing around with you. You've been working your ass off all morning on this IRP stuff.
I was up until, if you want the truth, I was up until 1:30 in the morning writing a Frank Martin feature that's now been bumped a couple of days because of this. So
that's miserable. At least it's done though. But that is
it is done, and I think the intention will still be to run that Frank Martin feature. UMass out to an 8-2 start. But yeah, had I known this was coming, you can better believe that I would not have been working until 1:30 in the morning on a feature that I expected to put the finishing touches on and run today. Anyway, point I was making was sleepy week, but we're giving you a ton of pods here. So Jay Wright will be tomorrow, and then we will have our Friday episode. The Saturday is so freaking loaded. Cannot wait for our Friday episode there. But the game to know tonight is UCLA at Maryland. That's a 9 o'clock Eastern tip on Fox Sports 1. By far the best game on the schedule. That is I got to see it there. Maryland is 8-2 coming off back-to-back losses. I mentioned this on the Sunday pod, which you weren't on, but and I brought this up. I bet you've forgotten about it. Remember what we mentioned with Maryland like 4 or 5 episodes ago?
I don't remember.
Exactly.
These things come and go for me.
Over under 1.5 losses for this team after they started 8-0. Do you remember what you said?
No idea.
I love it. We both said under, so we were both correct. Not joyously, but we were both correct. They've lost 2 in a row. They're going to try and dodge a 3rd straight L. They're all quality teams. All teams, clearly streaking toward being tournament teams. In Wisconsin, that's a roadie, and then losing on a neutral in Brooklyn on Sunday to Tennessee. Now they get the home tilt against a UCLA team that is also 8-2. Also, it's only 2 losses, respectable. Illinois and Baylor on neutrals there. I'm really excited for this one. UCLA in a cross country, a good spot. That building will be rocking. And I got to be honest, Parrish, sometimes I look at these matchups when we make our Friday picks. I can get a decent feel. I kind of don't know what to expect here because Maryland 8-2. If we would have said that going in, we've been like, yeah, I think I could probably see that, but we just don't know. A lot of the roster's unknown, but Jameer Young's been great. Dante Scott has been the team's, I think start to now probably most overall valuable player there. But they're waiting for Donald Carey to be a bit more impressive. Hakeem Hart's been pretty good, and then UCLA's got proven guys, but they're on the road in a spot. What are you in a tough spot? What are you expecting from the greatest coach in UCLA history in this spot here in the house that Grievous Vasquez built?
I never know what to expect. Have you seen my Final 4-1 record?
You're only one behind me, I believe. We're good.
I never know what to expect. Here's the truth. I can't tell you it's going to be a great game. I can tell you it's going to look amazing.
Better, yeah.
And that's why this is what I love. Big brand on campus. Let's go. We get into a habit of watching so many neutral court games, and sometimes they're great, in terms of atmosphere, but more often than not, they're just not. And that's why I always prefer things to happen on campus or in true home road environments. And that's what we get tonight. It should be noted that UCLA just isn't randomly, and forgive me if you've mentioned this, isn't just like randomly flying across the country to play Maryland. They're in the CBS Sports Classic on Saturday at New York's Madison Square Garden. So I haven't talked to the UCLA staff about this specifically, but I'm assuming they just sort of said, hey, we're going to New York anyway. Let's see if we can find an East Coast, start a home and home with somebody and find a East Coast opponent that we can play at, in the week when we're going to New York, and then we'll just go there, go straight to New York, and then come back home. So they're taking advantage of an East Coast an East Coast trip and getting 2 games on this trip as opposed to just 1. Whatever the motivation is, I'm just glad it's happening because you're right. It is a kind of a boring week because a lot of schools are in finals and coaches at big time programs don't like traveling typically during finals week because it creates all sorts of problems. These are actual students who have to take exams and stuff, at least at most places. And so it really limits the amount of quality, interesting games we have. But we did have Alabama, Memphis last night. We're going to have Maryland, UCLA tonight. And, I don't know if this would have been one everybody circled in the preseason because Maryland, frankly, wasn't supposed to be good. And we might find out that Maryland isn't as good as Maryland looked in those first 8 games of the season. But Maryland is 8-2. Maryland is nationally ranked. And Maryland has beaten, Illinois, Miami, St. Louis. So I wouldn't rule anything out tonight. I guess if, to circle back to your neutral initial question, what am I expecting tonight? A competitive basketball game. I think we'll be at the under 4 and it'll still technically be up for grabs. I'd be surprised if that's not true.
All right, Nada, if we get to the under 4 and it's like 14 points or more on either side, just please cut that and tweet it. Just please cut it. Okay, that's all I ask.
I got you.
And I want the same of me. If I have said something on this pod, I want the same treatment. I want to be dunked on. Okay, that's what I want.
That's I'm cutting that. You want to be dunked on? Oh, I'm absolutely cutting that right now.
What did I just do? What did I do?
All right. Does that do it? Is that just about it? Is that a podcast?
It's a podcast.
Boy, I sure could use a nap. Those 7:15 CBS Sports HQ hits, they make the days go long. I was on CBS Sports HQ talking about UCLA, Maryland before you were even awake this morning, maybe.
That's not true.
Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Larnell. I hope he's doing all right. Yes. I hope he's doing all right. Shouts to Huck. Thank you guys once again for listening to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. If you're not subscribed, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Over at Apple, 5 stars, nice review. There's more of us than there are of them. Don't ever let them trick you and make you think otherwise. Coming up, like Norlander said, on Thursday, there will be a Jay Wright episode. He's our colleague now. He used to just be our pal, our club going pal. But now he's our colleague.
Just me and him, by the way. No GP on this one.
Yeah, and the reason is I'm not going to be fired before tomorrow. I don't think. The reason is I was flying when this was taped. This was taped earlier in the week, and I was on a plane, and that was the time that we needed to do it. So it's just Norlander and Jay Wright, and I'm sure it'll be terrific. I can't wait to watch that episode.
It's a good conversation. He is welcomed into the podcast family, and I believe he will be an Eye on College Basketball guest exclusive. So we appreciate Jay for that.
By the way, we had like a town hall, CBS Sports town hall this morning. I don't know how much I'm allowed to say or not, but like Jay was, part of the panel at one portion of it and was just terrific. He's just terrific. Like the reason everybody thinks he's terrific is because he is.
That's right. He doesn't want to be trivia timed. Well, he was spared the first time. I can't promise the second appearance, whenever that might be. He'll get the same treatment there.
Can't wait to trivia time Jay Wright someday. So we'll have that in your feed tomorrow on Thursday. And then on Friday, our normal episode where I'll predict the outcomes of games and probably go something like 1-4. So I can't wait for that. Appreciate you guys being here. Smash the like button if you haven't done that yet. And we will talk to you again real soon. Till then, take care.